January 5th, 2021 to order at 6:15 p.m. We apologize for being a little late, but thank you for joining us this evening. On March 16th, 2020, the governor suspended various provisions of the Open Meetings Act pursuant to his state of disaster authority. The change was effective March 16th, 2020 until further notice or until the state of disaster declaration expires. In accordance with physical distancing guidelines, and while providing as much transparency as possible, this meeting will not be open to the public. This meeting is being broadcast live at wccc.tv. The audio is also being recorded. The video and audio recordings will be available to the public. According to the governor and attorney general, statutes may require face-to-face interaction between members of the public and public officials are suspended, provided, however, that the governmental body offers alternative methods of communication with their public officials. This includes public comment on agenda items. In an effort to allow for as much public input as possible, those who wish to speak or submit their written comments on a listed agenda item were asked to register with the city secretary's office by 1 p.m. today. Individuals who register to speak on an agenda item must limit their comments to 3 minutes. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. When called to speak, please state your name for the record. Any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or who becomes boisterous while addressing the city council shall be removed if directed by the presiding officer. And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is to consider the corrected minutes of the December 1st, 2020 regular council meeting and minutes of the December 15th, 2020 regular council meeting. Are there any corrections?
Mayor and council, before we go in, I just wanted to show you what was corrected on page 10 of the December 1st meetings. The approved for a 3-0 vote was what was changed. And then it was brought to my attention that on the actual December 15th council meeting, that the end time on page 1 should say 6:57 p.m. instead of 5:11. So if council would like to approve with that correction, that'd be great.
Right. Are there any corrections? There being no corrections, the minutes will stand approved as presented. We have 9 public hearings on the agenda tonight that will be presented by our Development Services Director, Clint Peters.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution approving the following subdivision plats. Final plat and construction plans of the Royals Ranch Edition phases 3 and 4. By a vote of 9-0, Plan Commission recommended that the subdivision plats and construction plans be approved.
Are there any questions for staff? We'll now open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
No, sir.
All right. We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Porterud.
Yes.
Bearfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes.
That stands approved.
All right. We'll now conduct a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Moe's Girls 5231 LLC for short-term rental type 2 in an R1B district on property described as Lot 3, Block 5, Meadowood Edition, known as 2408 North 49th Street. Clint, are you supposed to read that or am I supposed to read that?
Yeah, I can read that for you.
All right. Well, sorry about that. Take your thunder.
Before we start this public hearing, 008 through 012, the public hearings are all special permits with the same findings. So I'd like to read those in the record first and then go each individual case. So the findings for approval are that the proposed use are consistent with the comprehensive plan, that the proposed use is compatible with the appropriate early development of the area which is located, that the proposed use would not be more objectionable to neighboring properties because of traffic congestion, noise, fumes, vibrations, or any other characteristics that any use permitted in the zoning district without the grant of the special exception. and that available community facilities and services, including the road system providing access to the proposed use, are adequate for the proposed use. So specifically for case public hearing 2021-008, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to AKA Mo's Girl 5231 LLC for a short-term rental type 2 in R1B zoning on property described as Lot 3, Block 5, Meadowood Edition, known as 2408 North 49th Street. By a vote of 7-2, the Plan Commission did recommend approval of the request based on the findings that I just read in the record. Pursuant to state law and the zoning ordinance, if a protest is filed with a commission or council against an application, it shall not be approved except by a 3/4 vote of the members of City Council. Protest must be signed by the owners of 20% or more, either of the land of the lots included in the application or the lots of land adjacent, immediately adjoining the area which the subject property of the application extending 200 feet from such area. A protest was received meeting this criteria, therefore a 3/4 City Council vote is required for approval.
Thank you, Clint. Any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. I believe there are registered speakers for this. Is that correct? Great.
That is correct. We have first Amy Mose, who is the applicant.
Good. Good evening, Ms. Mose. Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Greetings. Thank you, City Council board members, for hearing me today. It's a great January the 5th. I turned 45 today.
Happy birthday.
That's great. That's a slogan I've heard for many years around the Mose household. I'm Amy Mose. I'm the owner of 2408 North 49th and 2400 North 50th Street, which is a block away. This is Waco, my home. I was born and raised here. I believe this would be a wonderful neighborhood. And I believe this neighborhood would be great for an STR. In no way would it be a negative impact or a nuisance to myself or my neighbors. As a homeowner of only about 200 feet away, I would be the property manager of this home. And it would be my number one job to ensure to screen each applicant for that applies to rent this house to be in my neighborhood, as well as my children's neighborhood and my neighbors. I'm very excited. I've had 25 years as a frontline healthcare worker, and I'm blessed to have the ability to grow myself as a single mom of 2 school-age children, established in the neighborhood to establish an STR with my block. This would be a safe place and perhaps a future home for my widow mom to live at one point if she chooses, or my children to grow into as they go to college. My intentions are not to be a hotel. My standards are set high to ensure my STR renters would keep my neighborhood peaceful and safe as I learn to grow and grow and make Waco great again. I know there was some issues as I was reading some comments. I could ensure that the neighborhood would stay safe by being the property manager of it. I'm ensuring that I have the ability to set the rules and regulations and enforce them, being so close to it. One of the residents was concerned about parking. I can ensure that I can personally go over and make sure no one's parked on the street and have rules set stricter than the Waco rules, that there will be no parking on the street after 10 p.m. There are plenty of spaces in the parking garage for 2, and there's also 4 spots at the house for residents to park. I just am here to open up and have any questions or concerns I can answer for my neighbors and you guys.
Any questions for Ms. Mose? Thank you, Ms. Mose. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
And I believe now we have, is it Marilyn Eamon next?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Ms. Eamon, are you on the line?
Let me unmute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Good
okay,
evening, Ms.
hi.
Eamon.
Hi, how are you?
Doing fine.
Okay, you want me to go?
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
Okay, here I go. Hi. Okay, my name is Marilyn Eamon, and I do live at 2433 North 49th. It's just a one and a half blocks, one and one half house over from Amy's proposal. Bob and I have lived in this neighborhood for 40 years. We've raised our adult children who are now adults, and now we have grandchildren that are coming into town that we're showing the old stomping grounds to. So very much invested in this street, 49th Street. Just as a side note, I am a past president of the Mountain View Neighborhood Association. In fact, I was the second one. Lynn Ann Kendrick was first, and then I was the second one. And it was just, and I have scrapbooks and notes that somebody needs to look at and have. So if y'all are getting back into this, I was kind of peeking in on some of your other meetings earlier, and it was really, it kind of made my heart go, whoo, maybe I'm not dead yet. You know, I am 65. I feel it sometimes when the grandkids have come and gone. But as I'm hearing what y'all are talking about, you're using words like revitalization, neighborhood pride, maintaining the character of our Waco neighborhood, just all of them and the history. And that's music to my ears. So anybody who knows me or has been around me in this setting, in this neighborhood, and in this raising children and around here, that's kind of words that sing to me. And also, it's something any 65-year-old grandma wants to hear as we move on. So I have 3 minutes. I've got 3 points because I am a fast talker, but I talk too much sometimes. Okay, here we go. Growth. One of the things, and I did stay up till 1 o'clock last night reviewing again the comprehensive 2040 plan. You know, I'm one of those kind of people that does try to do my homework. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, I was like, wow. I mean, as I began to read the vision, the growth, goals and objectives, things that all you guys and many of the city people have gone through, I thought we're there. We have tons of growth in this neighborhood. My house faces, Pine runs into my front door on the yellow door down there to run into, don't run into my house, but strollers, mommies, daddies, dogs, grandmas, nannies, caregivers. You couldn't ask for a more diverse and a much more active neighborhood. Amy's right. We're a friendly neighborhood. We know her, and she certainly is a good neighbor. But back to the point of the comprehensive plan. So we really have homeowners that I spend a lot of time in my front yard talking to that are excited about being in Waco, raising their family. In fact, several grandmothers ask me if there are homes for sale in the neighborhood because they do want to move close to their family. So I get that. Lots of generational, lots of stories in Waco. We have a story here around every corner. Some of the 80 and 90 and 100-year-old people are either spending their last days or have already left. But we are getting to see this all play out. So it's a very historical neighborhood. You guys know a lot about the neighborhood, I'm sure. So moving on, I did see on the website, I thought was interesting, some of the charts and graphs. There's so many, they're so wonderful, but they do point to the fact that home ownership is something that is not considered a negative. In fact, it's a positive when you're looking at revitalizing neighborhoods and certainly bringing community, bringing people who invest their own personal time and energy. I can't tell you, I have a plethora of experiences and people who do that here. And we are redoing plumbing one more time here. So we're in the game as well. So
that was a 5 minute, the 3 minute mark. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I'll just let
If you could just wrap up your comments.
My last closing statement, because I do believe that we can meet those goals. I have a recommendation that comes from the neighborhood and certainly those who signed the petition. Our recommendation is let's slow the spread of the motel businesses in our Waco residential neighborhoods today so that we can revitalize tomorrow. Let's do it. Come on, guys, call me. Thank you for your time. Let's slow this spread. It's not healthy for our neighborhoods. And we can move on to revitalization. Hope to be a part of it. Hope you guys visit us on 49th. See you later. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Mose, you have I believe a 3 minute rebuttal. Is that right, Esmeralda? Yes. All right, Ms. Mose, are you still on the line? Ms. Mose, are you still on the line? Okay.
She is. Let me give her.
Yes. Sorry.
If you'd like a rebuttal, a 3 minute rebuttal, you're able to have that.
Thank you. Hi, this is not a hotel. This is a lovely property that I've personally worked hard on to get updated up to health standards to become a residence, an STR, a future home for my own daughters, maybe someday when they go to college, but to polish it right now as an STR to ensure that I have some income off of the residence that I someday do hope my mother will reside in her golden years. I think an STR is a much more profitable, but also a more lovely aspect to our neighborhood than a long-term rental, because I live beside long-term rentals and the rules and regulations are not as strict as I could see as a property manager for my STR. And I can ensure that I can be there within minutes if there is a problem or a neighbor has a concern going on. When I go to a website called Air and DNA, it's a data insight to rental property. It evaluates data from over 40,000 cities and 750,000 properties globally. It estimates that this property will only be rented about 49% of the year. That gives me about 51% of the year to keep the updates going, to maintain the yard, to ensure the value of the house is gonna go with the neighborhood. I don't want to devaluize my house here in my home or my home neighborhood by any means, or anybody else's. And I don't want anyone to feel that I'm unapproachable to ask or call in the middle of the night and tell me that there's problems at my residence, because I would definitely take it upon myself that this is my number one goal, is to ensure the safety of my children, my home, my neighborhood. And again, I would be the property manager to ensure that each applicant is screened, and it's my judgment to allow them to stay there or not.
Thank you, Ms. Mose.
Thank you, guys.
Are there any other registered speakers tonight?
No, sir, not on this item.
All right, we will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Is there a second? Okay, hearing no second, then that will fail. Is there another motion?
I move that we disapprove the go ahead, Hector.
I was just going to make a motion to deny the request.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'll just roll in here. And I think my position over the years has been sort of well known here. There's a reason that the city zones certain parts of town as residential, and that's to create an expectation you can put a home there and live in a neighborhood of single family residences. So I have a very high standard on when these STRs go into residential neighborhoods of changing that nature. We've seen them work. Certain neighborhoods say, yeah, we love what you're doing there, and we love the investment you're making. Certain ones, it just doesn't work. And then this one, it's evident to me, particularly as we cross the threshold of the triggered supermajority, it's evident to me that it just doesn't work in this particular neighborhood. And to me, so long as that sentiment not to have it is not based on gender, age, creed, color, etc. And this one, it appears that it is not. So I am voting to preserve the single-family nature of this particular sub-neighborhood in Mountain View. And I'm happy that there was no acrimony here, because sometimes this stuff can get acrimonious. And again, it's not personal. It's evident that we have good neighbors here, and hopefully everybody goes away from this happy. But I will be voting yes on the denial.
Is there any other discussion?
I do understand, and I know that we work hard and preserving neighborhoods and preserving growth. I mean, I know within my own district, I think it's imperative that the people who are creating or applying for STRs live within the community, if not in the house, definitely in the neighborhood, which is one of the reasons that I didn't think this one was it didn't fit in that mold, because I'm not supportive of the people who don't live here but they want to create STRs here. But because this owner did live within proximity, that's why I was like, well, that may be something that's workable and doable, because they're still responsible and obligated for the community. But we do hear dissent from the neighborhood and understand that so this will be me saying, let's do an analysis at some point on how we, where we are in the STR world, to make sure that, we've set a decision and a precedent about what we want our city to look like regarding STRs, because we are a destination. And if we do not get a handle on what this looks like as from our perspective, we're going to have to keep doing this, because STRs go in neighborhoods. That's how that works. And so we're going to have to figure out what our path and plan is, so that we don't have to keep creating this circle.
I echo a combination of what both Councilmembers Holmes and Bearfield said. I think on the one hand, like Councilwoman Bearfield said, I love that this is a local, she's a frontline worker, single mom, like this is a way for her to generate wealth and still have eyes on the property and maintain it. But on the other hand, we have such strong opposition from the neighbors. And because we live in a collective society, my preference is to defer to that of the group over that of the individual, while still maintaining that I think having local STR owners is much more preferable than having out-of-state owners.
Clint, I have a question. Do you know if this kind of goes to the conversation we had earlier, but if Ms. Mose ever had conversations with her neighbors about this? And I don't know if she's still on the line. I don't think she is. Oh, she is.
I believe she's still on the line.
She is. I don't know if we have to do we close the public hearing portion, or are we allowed to continue discussion, Jennifer?
You probably should reopen the public hearing if you're going to ask her a question.
Let me pause on that question then and just ask, if we were to vote this down today, what would she be able to, would Ms. Mose be able, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because there's been other times that we've had people that were applying for short-term rentals, and they were like, man, if my neighbors are opposed to this, why don't I go and talk to them and see if I can work something out and come back? And maybe that sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't. But what if we were to vote this down today, what would Ms. Moses' recourse be in terms of being able to come back and apply at a later date? Clint?
Yeah, so a vote of denial would require to wait a year before bringing another application back for a short-term rental.
Okay.
A special permit.
I would like to reopen the public hearing and ask Ms. Mose a question. So I'll do that at this time. Ms. Mose, are you still on the line?
She is. Let me unmute her. Oh, there she is.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
I just have a question. Would you want this hearing to be continued to the next meeting for you to go and talk to some? I know that a petition came in late this afternoon with several new opponents on it. Would you want to take some time to go talk to your neighbors individually before we voted on this today, in case it did get shot down, and in case that would then prohibit you from coming back for a year?
Yes, sir. I would absolutely take that advantage of. I would also like just one point that this house has been vacant for 7 years. And I believe you have a letter from one of my long-term neighbors about houses that have been vacant, which was a very important point to some of my neighbors, that the house would at least have some people in it. And I'm there nearly 7-8 times a day, just checking on it, making sure the construction that I'm doing is going good, and people are locking the doors and shutting the fences, and there's not trash in the road. So yes, I would absolutely love to talk to the neighbors that have opposed this today. I believe I would go door to door with my mask on as soon as I'm COVID free. Currently I'm on medical leave for COVID, but I would do that ASAP.
I'm sorry to hear that, Ms. Mose. Thank you for that comment. Unless there's any other questions, I'll close the public hearing. Jennifer, if I wanted to, I know there's a motion on the table right now. Do we need to vote on there's a motion in a second. Do we need to vote on that, or can that be withdrawn if the mover wanted to withdraw that motion?
So there is a motion in a second. The mover could take an amendment. I guess it'd be a complete rewrite, but an amendment to continue the hearing to a date certain if that was the mover's desire.
I believe Hector was the mover. Hector, do you want to proceed or do you want to?
Sure, I'll definitely change my motion. I'll make a motion I'll change my motion to that we table this discussion or this public hearing until Ms. Mose has had an opportunity to at least chat with the majority of her neighbors to hopefully get consensus among them.
So Councilmember Sabito, on planning items, we need to continue them to a date certain. And given Ms. Mo's comments about her current situation, perhaps you might want to continue this hearing until February 2nd, 2021.
Yes, ma'am, that works for me. I'll continue to February 2nd, 2021, our first council meeting in February.
I will second that amended motion.
Very good. Any discussion? All right, please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Porteroo.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries. We will now move on to the next agenda item, which is public hearing 2021-009.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Elizabeth Tipton for a short-term rental type 2 in R1B zoning district on property described as Lot 4, Block 14 of the Wentz Heights Edition, known as 3212 Wentz Avenue. By a vote of 9-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting a special permit per section 28.122 of the zoning ordinance.
Very good. Are there any questions for staff? All right, we will open the public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
No, sir.
All right, we will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Porteroo.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes. We will now move to public hearing 2021-010.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Beasley Construction LLC for short-term rental type 3 in an O2 zoning district on property described as Lot 14, Block A of the Mann subdivision, known as 511 South 10th Street. By a vote as 9-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting special permit per section 28.122 of the zoning ordinance.
Very good. Are there questions for staff? All right, we will open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
No, sir.
We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Porteroo.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes. That motion passes. We will now move to public hearing 2021-011.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Terry and Nancy Gurno for a short-term rental type 2 in R1B zoning district on property described as Lot C and 4, Block 17 of the Provident Edition, known as 2214 Ethel Avenue. By a vote of 9-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting a special permit per section 28.122 of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you, Clint. Are there any questions for staff? All right, we will open a public hearing. Are there any registered speakers for this item?
Yes, sir. We have Terry and Nancy Guma, who are applicants on the line. Mr. and Mrs. Gumo, you have 3 minutes.
All right, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, I'm Terry and my wife is with me, Nancy. We bought this beautiful little home just a couple of months ago. We've been coming to Waco for about 4 years now. We are Keller Williams agents in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is where our primary residence is. So we come to Austin a lot and we were looking for a place once we found Waco that's between Dallas and and Austin, a place where we could come down in the winter and get out of the cold. And so we found this beautiful little home, and it's a great neighborhood. It's a home that has been completely redone and remodeled. We did not do the work. We bought it like that. We have seen pictures prior, and they did a beautiful job. And so when we're not here, we'd like to do a short-term rental. We have a property management company that's based here in Waco. They manage about 30 other properties called Villa Stay. They have a 5-star rating and is known as what's called a super host. They do a really good job. I think because whenever we travel, we choose to stay in Airbnbs wherever we go. And we do that because the quality of the property that you go to, the way that it's maintained, if there's anything that's wrong with it, it's addressed immediately. And not only do we rate the property, but also the property rates us as people who stay there. And so we do our very best, as I believe most people do when they stay in a short-term rental, to make sure that they get, as guests, they get a really good rating as well, so they can continue to use the short-term rentals. And again, but our goal is that this is going to be the place that we're going to come in the winter. We're here now, that we'll come in the winter. We will also come several other times with family members and stuff throughout the year. And so we love it here. We will be, and as we get closer to retirement, we will begin to spend more and more time here.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other individuals registered to speak?
No, sir.
All right, we will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion
Second.
to deny. Can we do both of those?
Jennifer, you can tell me, but there's been a motion, so we might need to roll this one out.
There's a motion to approve, and so I guess whichever motion gets the second first, I guess, is what goes.
I seconded Josh's motion.
Okay, so that's the motion on the floor.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor, so now we'll have discussion.
Okay, as this is District 4, some thoughts that I have. Singer Heights, like a number of District 4 neighborhoods, the beauty of them is they're really diverse, whether that's along multicultural lines, multi-economic lines. And my fear is that this is taking away properties from locals. I'd love to see properties in these low to moderate income neighborhoods be purchased and be tenant occupied by our neighbors. I think having out-of-state folks come and purchase properties increases the property values, and I just think there's a lot here that is tricky in low to moderate income neighborhoods. And there's a letter from a Singer Heights resident, Shannon Melberg, that was in our application packet that I thought was really thoughtful. And my other thought with this is, if you look at page 128, there are so many other STRs in this area. So for all of those reasons, I am going to vote no on this.
Any other discussion? All right, please pull the council.
My fault. Holmes?
Aye.
Palmer?
No.
Porteroo?
Yes.
Fairfield?
Yes.
Sabido?
Yes.
Meek?
No, that motion carries. Now we'll move to public hearing 2021-012.
Yes, sir. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Waco Property Rental LLC for self-storage warehouse and C2 zoning district and property described as Lot 1, Block 1 of the HB Casparian Edition, known as 27605 West Highway 84. By a vote of 8-1, Planning Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting of a special permit per section 28-122 of the zoning ordinance. Pursuant to state law and zoning ordinance, if a protest is filed with the commission or council against the application, it shall not be approved except by a 3/4 vote of all members of the council. Protest must be signed by the owners of 20% or more, either of the area of the lots included in the application or the lots of land immediately adjoining this area, which is the subject of the application and extending 200 feet from such area. Protest was received meeting this criteria, therefore the 3/4 council vote is required for approval.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Are there any registered speakers?
Yes, Mayor, there are. We have Taylor McInich on the line. I'm allowing him to speak. Mr. McInich, are you there?
Good evening. Can y'all hear me?
Hey, Taylor. We can. It's kind of breaking up a little bit, but try again.
So can you hear me now?
We can. That sounds great.
Okay. So this is Taylor McInich. I'm representing the proposed development located at 27605 West Highway 84. The first thing I want to say is thank you, Mayor, council members, for your time. If you take a look at the submitted application review packet Z20-74 on page 19 and 20, there are 3D renderings of a Google Maps overlay. Page 20 actually shows you the view of the proposed storage facility along with the surrounding structures as if you're driving down Highway 84 in either direction. And we do this by utilizing Google Street View. There will be a masonry facade on the portion of the storage unit that are directly facing Highway 84. The enclosed self-storage, as you can see, fits perfectly in this location, and they look nice. With this being said, I'm asking that the amenity being self-storage units be approved by the mayor and city council based off the city staff findings and approval from the plan commission, as well as the TxDOT engineers. I also just wanted to make myself available to answer any questions or concerns that have not been addressed pertaining to the request for special permit. So in closing, thank you for reviewing the application.
Any questions for Taylor?
I have a question, Mayor. Taylor, a quick question for you. Have you had an opportunity? I'm sure you know, we've heard some opposition about the project that you're proposing. Have you had an opportunity to have a conversation with maybe those concerned neighbors to address their concerns?
No, sir, I have not. But I did submit a self-storage, a concern and response packet. It's a document labeled self-storage concerns and responses. And I was,
yes, sir.
I was really address their concerns tonight, but I have not been able to do it in person.
And I thank you for doing that. We did receive your feedback on the concerns. I don't know if the neighbors or the neighborhood have had the opportunity to see that. So my question is, would you be willing, if we were to table this public hearing, would you be willing to meet with those neighbors either through phone or, I don't want to say in person because of COVID right now, but in person, over the phone or via Zoom to address some of their concerns?
Absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
I can meet with them. What would be so if I say we meet, I just don't know what the next, the procedure, the next step would be to take, say I meet with all of them and they're all fine with it. What do we do from there?
Clint, you might speak to this, but my understanding is that we might be able to get something on the record from the neighbors that have that are within a certain square footage of your property to withdraw their opposition. Is that correct, Clint?
That's correct. And we can help Taylor facilitate, contacting the neighbors, give them contact information of the neighbors that did submit opposition.
Okay.
That would be that would be kind of the path forward, is to work with the neighbors to see if they can work out some of the concerns they have. The special permit does allow you to put specific conditions on the property that could address some of the concerns. I mentioned the one at the work session about the hours of operation. I think there was some concern about being all night, a business being open all night, people have access to it. So there is potential to put a limit on when people could access the property that could alleviate some of those concerns.
Yeah, this facility, we plan on having it just be from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Operation hours. So after that, everybody will be locked out.
Mm-hmm. So procedurally, Taylor, is that something that you'd be interested in us doing to continue that, or would you prefer us take a vote tonight? We had this issue come up earlier, and Clint, I'm assuming that this is the same process to where if this is denied tonight, Mr. McAninch wouldn't be able to come back for another year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So with that in mind, Taylor, given that there is some opposition for the immediate neighbors, and I think that based on the letters that they've submitted, it does appear like there are some, you've worked to address their concerns. You might be able to get some of the withdrawal of some of that opposition. So is that something you'd be interested in? Is tabling this for a couple weeks until you can go talk to them?
I would like to have that opportunity.
That's great.
Just if they're online, so I could address them in person with all you here. But unfortunately, I guess there's no other registered speakers.
Clint, is that something you could, since we have a list of opponents within a certain area or proximity to this property, Clint, is that something that you could help get Mr. McAninch that information and to try to ensure that those neighbors that have filed their opposition could withdraw it to the extent they felt more comfortable knowing how Mr. McAninch plans to approach this development?
Yes, that's something we can facilitate.
Okay. I just want to say one other thing, one note. So this property right now it's zoned C2 commercial. So the concerns that a few of the neighborhood have been applied or can be applied to facilities that are already permitted in the C2 commercial zoning district. So some of the permitted items in the C2 zoning district right now are facilities that sell alcoholic beverages for off-premise consumption, or self-serve laundries, or gas station convenience stores, motels and hotels, enclosed outside stores is even permitted. So I just wanted to note that the way that I feel about this development is that this is a minimal impact. So it's a minimal impact compared to some of the other things that are already permitted for this site. But I will take the opportunity to go and talk to the neighbors about it.
And I think that's well taken, Mr. McAninch. I think that that's really something important for us to consider, and also the neighbors to consider, is that by having this special permit process, it really will ensure that a development that comes in here is going to be able to address some of their concerns, like the buffer zone, the foliage you plan to plant, as well as the direction of the lighting, which would not be guaranteed based on a lot of other uses for the C2. So I think that that's something well taken. But if you want to take that opportunity to go talk to your neighbors, we'd like to give you that time.
Yes, I'll take that opportunity.
Pretty good.
So Mayor and Council, so I hear y'all talking about a continuance of this public hearing until either the second meeting in January or the first meeting on February. I don't know that y'all have decided that, but we do have, I understand, some other people who are signed up to speak on this public hearing item. And so, Mayor, we traditionally have given those people the opportunity to speak at this meeting if that's more convenient for them.
That's great. Yep. That sounds good. Mr. McAninch, you will have an opportunity to rebut. So we will, if there's other speakers on the line, we will move on to them.
I don't have any other speakers registered to speak on this item.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, if there are no other speakers, we will close the public hearing. And is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we table this public hearing to our February 2nd meeting, 2021, to allow Mr. McAninch to speak with his neighbors, or speak with the neighbors in the area and address their concerns.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Porteroo.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes. That motion carries. We will now move on to public hearing 2021-013.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing that the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code, providing that the zoning map shall be changed so a certain property described as 2.807 acre tract of land situated in the Thomas de la Vega survey, abstract number 43, City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, and being a portion of Block 10 of the Riddles addition, in addition to the City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, recorded in volume 111, page 432 of the plat recorded records of McLennan County, Texas, being a portion of the 4.66 acre tract of land described in a deed to the Lagista de Acre, a tract of land described in the deed of Lagista de Waco LLC, recorded in document 2020-06637, the official public records of McLennan County, Texas, and also being all of the fourth tract and a portion of the first tract and the third tract described in volumes 1315, page 560, the deed records of McLennan County, Texas, and two, a 1.861 acre tract of land situated in Thomas de la Vega survey, abstract number 43, City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, and being a portion of Block 10 of the Riddles addition, in addition to the City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, recorded in volume 111, page 432 of the plat records of McLennan County, Texas, being a portion of a call 4.66 acre tract of land described in a deed to Lagista de Waco LLC, recorded in document number 2020-006637, official public records of McLennan County, Texas, and also being all the second tract in a portion of the first tract and a third tract described in volume 1315, page 560, the deed records of McLennan County, Texas, known as 1018 North Loop Drive, shall be changed from C3 and R2 district classifications and be designated into O2 and C2 district classifications, providing for penalties, providing severability clause, and finding and determine that the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 8-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the following findings. One, the proposed zoning is keeping with the land use component of the comprehensive plan. Two, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in the O2 and C2 zoning district. Three, the property meets all the area and width requirements for O2 and C2. Four, there's O2 and commercial zoning near the subject property. And five, the proposed zoning provides better development opportunities that are more compatible with the transition of the area than the existing zoning.
Any questions for staff?
I hope I wasn't on mute.
That would have been bad.
Could you repeat that, Clint?
No.
No.
So, Clint, do we have an idea of what this is to be?
So we have met with the developer and they have submitted some proposed plans that are mixed use. We do have to, when we look at these zone change, we do have to consider everything that's allowed in the zoning.
Yes.
But what they're proposing is a mixed use development that would have a mix of commercial retail and multifamily residential.
I only ask because, as we've been talking about revitalization and building and developing whole communities this whole meeting. We have a theme today, clearly. I just want to make sure that as we, make these changes and make these adjustments in zoning, that, we are doing things that enhance our communities and neighborhoods, bringing things that will, benefit our constituents and our residents in a manner that will allow them to grow and be better and prosperous and continue to do the things that make neighborhoods whole. So I'm excited to see some movement. And I'm excited to see new opportunities for residents, new bills, especially within District 1. I want places that young professionals can come. Empty nesters can decide to downsize and move. So I'm excited to see what comes of this in an active, live work environment.
Any other questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, we will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porterud,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries. We will now move on to public hearing 2021-014.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing that the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code, providing that the zoning map shall be changed to a certain property described as lots 20, B3, and A4 in 21, Block 20 of the Bagby Edition, known as 1200, 1212, and 1214 Spade Avenue, shall be changed from Plan Unit Development District classification and become and be designated in the C2 district classification, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 8-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the following findings. One, the proposed zoning is keeping with the land use component of the comprehensive plan. 2, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in C2 zoning. 3, the property meets all the area and width requirements for C2 zoning. 4, there is a commercial zoning adjacent to the subject property. And 5, the proposed change is consistent with the requirements of the PUD ordinance.
Any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
no, sir.
We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Make a motion for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porterud,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries. We'll now move on to public hearing 2021-015.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing that the Code of Ordinances be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code, providing that the zoning map shall be changed at certain property described as Lot 16, Block 4, the Proctor Springs Edition, known as 2007 North 5th Street, shall be changed from R2 district classification to become and be designated into O3 district classification, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determine that the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 8-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the following findings. 1, the proposed zoning is keeping with the land use component of the comprehensive plan and the Imagine Waco plan for greater downtown. 2, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in O3 zoning. 3, the property meets all the area and width requirements for O3 zoning. And 4, there's O3 zoning near the subject property.
Any questions for staff? All right, we will open a public hearing. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
no, sir.
We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
I'm struggling with the mute button. Aye.
Porterud,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries. We will now, the next item is to consider the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of resolutions 2021-016 through 2021-023. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion for approval on the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porterud,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries. There's one ordinance for consideration on second reading.
It's ordinance 2021-24, an ordinance abandoning a 0.11 acre alley located between Rusk Avenue and Tyler Street from Sherman Street to Preston Street, described as being a 0.11 acres tract of land, McLennan County, Texas, being a 20-foot wide alley in Block 17 of the Renix Edition to the City of Waco as recorded in Volume 28, page 502 of the deed records in McLennan County, Texas, and authorizing the city manager to execute quitclaim deeds. providing a severability clause, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed, is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 5-1 council vote on first reading on December 15th, 2020.
Is there a motion?
May we have a speaker, Mayor?
Oh, so sorry. That's great.
Stephen Sloan, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, Mayor Meek. I'd like to speak.
You have your shot, man. Go for it.
I just wanted to thank the council for moving this forward. I want to thank the city planning to working with me, particularly Allison Duncan, in getting this approval through. I did want to bring up one thing that I think Councilman Holmes brought up last time when we were talking about this. The thing the neighbors that were participating in the last meeting asked me about was this access easement that's been granted to the one neighbor that's in opposition. Like, they didn't really understand just the idea of keeping that aspect of the alley open. He's got a lot that faces Preston Street. He doesn't have, there's really not a accessory structure or anything like that, say in the back of his house, that he would need an alleyway to get access to. I know he parks in the tenant that he has parks in that alley at times, but I don't think that's something that he necessarily has a right to do. And so I just would say, you know, your vote clears the Youngs in our residence projects. We're happy to move forward those residence projects. I just think you're going to get a lot more of these alleyway abandonments. And it seems if you're going to open it up for neighbor development, that you would want to be consistent going forward, that you do complete abandonments of the alley. And so it doesn't really affect my position on this, but just I've met, you know, about 17 of my neighbors now doing this process, and I know what their sentiment is with regard to these alleys. And so I'm hoping the city will free them up and allow them to be developed.
And just to be clear, Clint, or Jennifer, I guess, the first reading did approve a complete clearing of the alleyway, correct? That's right.
I believe that's correct, but I hope Clint's still on the line.
That's correct. It abandoned the whole alleyway, but did retain an easement, a utility easement for the whole alleyway, and then a portion of the alleyway of an ingress egress easement that's just adjacent to that one property that was opposed to the abandonment. But the whole alley will be abandoned.
It was the ingress egress easement that kind of confused the neighbors.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Mayor Meek.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I had a quick question for staff. So the whole thing is abandoned. I know we kind of talked about this last week. I'm in favor of doing it. I just want a clarification. The whole thing is abandoned, but we're leaving kind of what I would say the northeast end. I think that's right, for a few feet, to retain the easements. I guess that's where I kind of got unclear. But my core to my question is, can this last little bit come back to council for a request for full abandon, the same level of abandonment that we're doing on the most of it, the majority of it? I guess that's what I wanted to ask Clint before the motion was made.
Yes, in the future, because you're going to abandon the alleyway, it's going to be deeded to all the different property owners along that alley. On that one section, there'll be an ingress egress retained adjacent to that property. In the future, if the property changes hands and the new owner doesn't want that access easement there, they can request to abandon the easement and come back and request to abandon the easement.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was preserved for future parties. That's all I had.
Good. Any other discussion? All right, please pull the council.
Holmes?
Aye.
Palmer?
Aye.
Porterwood?
Yes.
Fairfield?
Yes.
Sabido?
Yes.
Meek?
Yes. That ordinance carries on second reading. We will now open the hearing of visitors. During the hearing of visitors section of the agenda, we will provide an opportunity for the public to present concerns or address issues that are not matters of consideration listed on the agenda. Council is unable to conduct discussions, but will listen Ask staff to look into concerns and provide follow-up. When called to speak, please state your name for the record. Each speaker must limit comments to 3 minutes. Any person making personal, impertinent, slanderous remarks, or who becomes boisterous while addressing the city council shall be removed if directed by the presiding officer. Are there any registered speakers for the hearing of visitors this evening?
Yes, sir. We have Alan Northcutt. I'm going to allow him to speak now. Mr. Northcutt, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm Alan Northcutt. Is my audio coming through?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The words of UN Secretary General Guterres in December are relevant to this council. Quote, "Can anybody still deny that we are facing a dramatic emergency? Every county, city, I underline city, financial institution, and company needs to adopt plans to reach net zero emissions by 2050. At the current rate of action, Waco will not reach this goal. The 2020-2021 city budget made no reference to funding for climate action. Unbelievably, the Sustainability Board has not met for 1 year and has no meetings scheduled in 2021, while many other boards hold teleconference sessions. Now, the transition to electric vehicles is key in reaching zero emissions. We are often told here that we want to use EVs, but not for frontline police vehicles, for example. So through an open records request, I found that no EVs were purchased over the last 12 months. My question is, why are most of these purchases not considered at council meetings? And why are they all SUVs, vans, and larger vehicles? But if that is accurate, there are electric SUVs available now. In 2020, the Kia Niro SUV has been available, and that would have been an opportunity to move to an electric vehicle there. In 2021, the Mustang Mach-E and the Volkswagen ID4 Pro S, 2 more SUVs that are electric are coming out. So we recommend the following. That number 1, the city council oversee all vehicle purchases and be certain that EVs are really being considered. Number 2, to determine if these large vehicles are really needed, or can some of these be replaced with smaller vehicles. Number 3 is to seriously consider the available options. I have a chart among your handout there, and it marks the 3 SUVs I mentioned and several smaller EVs that could substitute for general car use. So there's plenty of options there. As a co-benefit, EVs will improve health and save lives by eliminating tailpipe air pollution from cars, which kills 53,000 per year in the United States. And your file has an example showing the air quality in Waco today and yesterday, both moderate, meaning particulates, ozone. So our air quality needs improvement. Finally, our new resident Amazon is working toward 100,000 electric vans by 2030. Gasoline cars are being phased out by law all over the world. So Waco needs to seriously advance this transition to really a superior form of transportation. There is no advantage to gasoline cars in 2021. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Northcutt. Are there any other individuals registered to speak?
No, sir.
We will close the hearing of visitors. Are there any council member reports on committees, boards, or commission liaison visits or future agenda items?
Mayor, allow me to, continue to brag on our youth council. They're doing a wonderful job. They had their election officers on yesterday, so I'm looking forward to the new transition of leadership. I have also asked that they create a marketing piece that we can work with a public information office to showcase on our city channel and perhaps share with some of our other local networks on recruitment of young people so that we can continue the advancement of civic engagement and education amongst our high school students. So I'm sure they'll be reaching out to Larry and the public information team to assist them in recording said commercial. So if you get that and you're like, where did this come from? I did it. I did it. Regarding a future agenda item, you know, again, along with the theme, this might be a good time for us to go back and look at our Tif zones, because we have a lot of areas within our community that need to be developed and may need a little assistance and oversight. So that we can make sure that as we grow and build and develop, it is something that we want Waco to look like 50, 70, 100 years from now. And so I think that this may be a strong enough opportunity and time to look at our Tif zones. I mean, I know we've been, and I appreciate Bradley and the third floor team prior to his city managership coming up with inventive ways to incentivize businesses that were outside our existing Tif zones. But I think this may be an opportunity for us to just look at it as a whole and see if there's a better way for us to structure this going forward.
Totally agree. Thank you, council member. Anyone else? Before we adjourn, I'd like to just take one moment again to remember Lawrence Johnson, who passed away at the age of 72. Councilmember Johnson served on the city council from 1990 through 2000, representing District 1, and is considered one of Waco's local civil rights heroes. As a member of the city council, he helped to make Martin Luther King Jr. Day a city holiday and contributed to the work to rename Lake Brazos Parkway as Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. So please join me in extending our thoughts and prayers to the family as they mourn his loss. And there being no further business, we will adjourn this meeting at 7:21 p.m.